Welcome to Malifaux University. 205, Engagement and Disengaging. All marriage-related jokes aside, engagement in Malifaux is a serious matter. Engagement determines whether or not your models can move, what actions they can take, and more. It's worth the time to understand it fully. Most models have an engagement range equal to their longest melee action range. That's the one with the claw marks. This Grootsling model has 2 melee actions. His deadly claws have a 1-inch range, but his barbed tongue has a 2-inch range. His engagement range is 2 inches. Fitzsimmons has 3 attack actions: Picket Line with 1 inch, Arson with 10 inches, and Interrogate with 8 inches. Does that mean he has a 10-inch engagement range? Heavens no! Neither Arson nor Interrogate are melee actions. They don't have the little claw marks. Fitzsimmons' only melee action is Picket Line. He has a 1-inch engagement range. This ferocious Guildhound has a Snapping Jaws melee attack. It has the claw marks, but it has a 0-inch range. That just means that the Guildhound's engagement range is base contact. But then there's Hans, the Outcast Enforcer. He's a sniper with 2 projectile attacks, each with a 14-inch range. But he has no melee actions, so he has no engagement range at all. Even when he's in base contact with another model, he's not considered to be engaging that model. Also understand that engagement requires line of sight to the enemy model. If the Grootsling with its 2-inch engagement range is around the corner of a building or on the other side of a tall wall and cannot draw line of sight to Fitzsimmons, then the Grootsling is not engaging Fitzsimmons. It can ruin your plans in a game when you don't take into account that your enemy's engagement range may be longer than yours. Let's mix up these models and see what that looks like. The Grootsling has a 2-inch engagement range with its barbed tongue. Fitzsimmons has a 1-inch engagement range with his Picket Line and is 1.5 inches away from the Grootsling. The Grootsling is engaging Fitzsimmons, but Fitzsimmons is not engaging the Grootsling. Grootsling is free to do whatever he wants, while Fitzsimmons is restricted by the rules of engagement, which we'll get to in a minute. In another game, Grootsling is dealing with a Guildhound whose Snapping Jaws give it a 0-inch engagement range. Even at a 1/4 inch away, the Guildhound is not in base contact, so is not engaging the Grootsling. The Grootsling is engaging the hell out of that Guildhound though. Lastly, Grootsling manages to close the gap with Hans and is in base contact with the Outcast. Since Hans has no melee actions at all, he has no engagement range, and the Grootsling could just walk away if he wanted to. Hans, of course, is engaged by the Grootsling to a range of 2 inches. So what's the big deal about being engaged? It greatly limits the options available to your model. First and foremost, you cannot shoot while you're engaged. Unless your model has a special ability that says otherwise, you cannot take projectile actions, the ones with the little pistol next to them, while you are engaged. You can see why it would affect Hans so much to be engaged. All he has are projectile attack actions. The next action you cannot do while engaged is Interact. This is the action most models can take that allow them to drop scheme markers, affect certain strategy markers, or otherwise score points in a game. While an enemy model is engaging you, you cannot do any of this. You can take the walk action while engaged, but you cannot leave your enemy's engagement range with it if that enemy is engaging you. In the engagement example of Hans and the Grootsling, Hans could take a walk action to move around the Grootsling in the hopes that he would be in a better position to break away with his next action, but he has to stay within the Grootsling's 2-inch engagement range. In the earlier example of the Grootsling and Fitzsimmons being on opposite sides of a huge wall, Fitzsimmons may walk away from the Grootsling's 2-inch engagement range because the wall prevents the Grootsling from actually engaging Fitzsimmons. The last action you cannot take while engaged is Charge. This is a special 2-part action a model can take that allows it to push up to its movement stat and then take a melee attack action. While you're engaged, however, this one is off the table. So even if Fitzsimmons wanted to charge in that little extra he needed to engage the Grootsling, he wouldn't be able to do it with the charge action. He'd have to walk closer until he was also engaging the Grootsling, and then attack with his picket fence for his second action. Of course, that would put him within range of the Grootslang's deadly claws, so yeah. Special note, when you push a model, it can pass through an enemy model's engagement range without being trapped by that range. In fact, every movement action except walk will let you pass through another model's engagement range. Let's say the Grootslang has the Guildhound cornered at the edge of the playing area, but the Hound is just outside of the Grootslang's 2-inch engagement range. The Guildhound could take the charge action to push itself its 6-inch movement stat, passing through the Grootslang's engagement range and finishing safely outside it. This could work because the charge action doesn't have to have a target, and you don't have to make a melee action when you finish the push. The more you know, right? I'll also mention that if you try to shoot a model that is engaged or engaging another model, you suffer a friendly fire penalty, but that's the subject of another video. Now that we've covered how being engaged screws up your game, how do you get out of it? You disengage. This is an action any model can take, but obviously only while currently engaged. If you want to break away from the model that's engaging you, you declare you're going to take the disengage action on your activation. Your opponent then may choose to just let you go, or may choose one of her models engaging you, if there's more than one, and make a single melee attack against you. But don't worry, it's a fake attack. The first trick about this fake attack is that it has to be a legal attack. If Hans is more than 1 inch away from the Grootslang can't use its deadly claws to stop his disengagement. It can only use the 2-inch barbed tongue. If Hans were within 1 inch, the Grootslang could choose either of those attacks. The second trick about this attack is that neither the attacking model nor the model trying to disengage get to declare triggers. The suits of the cards you flip in this duel don't matter. It's a fake attack. Like any other duel though, both you and your opponent can cheat fate from your control hand if you don't like the cards you flip. If the fake attack fails, you get to push up to your movement stat in any direction you want, following the normal rules for pushing. Must go in a straight line, cannot cross other models' bases or terrain, stop when you hit any obstacle. Assuming your push is far enough to get outside of your enemy's engagement range, you're no longer engaged and may act freely. You can even push to get closer to the model engaging you, though it makes little sense to do so. But it's your game. Play it how you want. If the fake attack succeeds, it doesn't do damage. Your opponent flips a card, and the strength of that card reduces your push by 2 inches for a weak card, 4 inches for a moderate card, and 6 inches for a severe card. The normal rules for damage flips apply, so there may be positive or negative modifiers on the fake damage flip, depending on the difference of the duel totals. Also, if there is more than one model engaging you when you try to disengage, one model makes the attack, but gains a positive modifier to the fake damage flip for each other model engaging you. Let's look at all of this in action. Hans is tied up by 2 Guildhounds that rushed in on him and are threatening to ruin his boots. He announces he's taking the disengage action, so one of the Guildhounds gets to make a fake attack with snapping jaws. It's only attack. Guildhound flips a 10 of rams, but doesn't care about the ram since he can't declare triggers in this fake attack. Hans flips an 8 of masks and loses the duel 12-15. He doesn't cheat, and the Guildhound doesn't cheat, so it goes to the fake damage flip. The difference in their duel totals means the Guildhound has a negative modifier to the fake damage flip, but the other Guildhound engaging Hans gives a positive modifier, making this a straight flip. The Guildhound flips a 4. This weak card reduces Hans's push by 2 inches. He has a movement stat of 4, so now he can push 2 inches in a straight line in any direction to get away from the Guildhounds. They have a 0-inch engagement range, so even if he moves as little as a half or quarter inch away, he can then make either of his projectile attacks for his second action. Alternatively, if the Guildhound had cheated in a moderate card like a 6 for the fake damage flip, that would have reduced Hans's push by 4 inches, and Hans would have been stuck right there. He could then spend his second action trying again to disengage, starting the whole deal over. One final note is that if you successfully disengage during your activation, you may not take the interact action during that same activation. That's the overview of engagement and disengaging. Pick up a printable set of all the markers and tokens you need to play Malifaux in the Wargames Vault. If you haven't already, join our Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content, and be sure to visit the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.